Welcome everybody to the first installment of the n8n webinar week. And in this session, we're going to cover the foundations and basics of n8n. And also, by the end of this session, you're going to walk away with a live n8n agent, regardless of whether you had any experience with n8n. So, quick intro about me. My name is Marconi Damrawan, and I'm the Director of Revenue Operations at CodeCloud. And CodeCloud is a subscription-based platform for DevOps, engineering, more of IT professional enablement. I'm also an n8n trainer and facilitator at CodeCloud. So I do have a n8n Zero to Hero course at codecloud.com if you guys want to go and check it out. Apart from that, I also run a YouTube channel called Automate with Mark, where I teach a step-by-step guide to non-technical folks most of the time, on how to use powerful AI automations with none of the technical jargon, right? So if you want to get in touch, you can find me on YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, scan the QR code, and all my resources and contacts are there. So jumping into it, the goal for today is really to do a basic introduction to n8n, what is n8n, why we're using n8n. And of course, the first part of it, the first 10, 15 minutes or so, we're going to cover some of the theoretical basics to n8n. And don't worry, we're just going to cover those that you actually really need to build your first workflow. And those are important concepts for you to understand how it all works together. But right after that, it's going to be very hands-on, right? So we're going to make sure the session hands-on. So I hope that you guys are in front of your laptop or your system so you can get signed up, grab all the necessary tools to build your first live agent on n8n. Even if, again, if you're completely new, never heard of n8n before, you're going to walk away with that today. All right, just a quick poll before we start. Wanting to understand the level of familiarity. I see a lot of people from various different places on how familiar you are with n8n, right? From the scale of 1 to 5. 1 being, you've either never heard of it or heard of it, but never signed up, never really worked on any workflows before. And 5, you're really advanced, and technically you shouldn't be here because these are, we're going over the things that you already know. So yeah, if you can just type into the chat to see, what that looks like. That'd be great. Okay. So 1, 2, 3. Imam with a 4. Okay. Okay. A lot of 1s. All right. Somebody with a 5. So cool. All right. So a lot of 1 and 2s. So I think these sessions are going to be pretty useful for a lot of people. But of course, we're going to cover the basics first, and then we're going to show a couple of more advanced flow on what you can build with different types of tools and stuff like that. But the ones that we're going to build together are going to be the ones that, have all the free tools that you can grab, stuff that you don't need to put in your credit card to pay. I want to make sure that everyone can just follow along, the build. So let's jump right in. All right. So what is n8n, right? So n8n, if you don't already know, is basically, in simple terms, is an open and free workflow platform, right? So what it does is it just connects one process to another process, one app to another app, different services together in a very visual way. So it's very visual. That's why there's this huge uptake about it, because you can actually see it at work. So it has a huge selling point just because of that. People can actually see what it's doing. In technical terms, it actually runs under Node.js with Node.js under the hood. You don't really need to know what that is, but essentially that's to run the JavaScript, and it can either be cloud or self-hosted. In this session, we're going to talk about the cloud-hosted one, specifically n8n Cloud, because that's the easiest one to set up and also the easiest one to maintain. If there's any update from n8n, that's going to get updated first, as opposed to self-hosted. If you self-hosted, technically you can self-host it on your own system or a VPS, but you got to make sure that the maintenance are being taken care of if you're doing that, right? And you might be asking, with all the tools that are out there, why do we choose n8n, right? Of course, as any automation platform, orchestration is one of the most important, if not the most important thing that an automation platform does. But of course, apart from that, n8n comes with its reliability, right? So because you're building the node yourself, or even with the help of an AI, you are able to see the processes in each node, which makes it really reliable, and the control to that is very high. It's also very scalable. If you have the workflow configured, it's very easy to scale it, very easy to connect new apps into it. flexibility-wise, of course, you can build basically anything, right? So I think one of the tagline of n8n is you can automate and pretty much anything. So if you have third-party apps, third-party tools, as long as they have API exposed, MCP exposed, you pretty much can connect them to the workflow, and essentially that gives you all the control and flexibility that you need. And with all the tools out there, Claude, Zapier, OpenClaw, Manus, you probably heard of that. You're probably asking, why should we use n8n? Why should we consider n8n, right? So I don't want to get into the weeds of comparing n8n, which is an automation platform, with something like OpenClaw, where it is more of a 24/7 always-on agent, because structurally they're different. But with all of these automation tools, you technically can put them or position them in this sliding scale of the spectrum between control and reliability to independence and power and flexibility. So for example, if you're using OpenClaw and Claude, it comes with a lot of power flexibility. You can tell it something and they could, connect it with certain tools, etc. But the steps that it's taking, it's not necessarily visible to you. And that's why, you probably hear some stories about how it could go wrong, etc. And, how it could actually use certain tools in the way that you didn't anticipate before. And n8n and Zapier, basically being the automation platform, is the ones that actually you build from ground up. So you actually know what it does. The guardrails are there. So it's more deterministic than actually tools, like OpenClaw and Claude is. So that's probably how you want to view, where these tools fall in terms of where the spectrum is. So all right, so diving into the foundations and the theoretical side, the concepts, the important concepts that we're going to cover today, right? So again, I'm going to try to keep this as brief and as concise as possible, only the need to know basis type of stuff, right? So we're going to do a quick introduction to nodes, right? The types of nodes that there are in n8n. We're going to also explore some AI agent architecture, what it all means, how do you connect it to an AI agent on n8n, and then what are the input formats? What is the input? What is the output? What are the expressions? What is the fixed format? And then also understand how n8n handle the data types. And these four things are super important because without this, even if you can automate the build, you wouldn't understand what's going on. So n8n, if you don't already know, is a short form for nodemation, right? So essentially what it is just a bunch of nodes connected together to create a workflow. So nodes are really the building component of n8n. So in n8n, there are two types of nodes, right? You've got the trigger nodes, which is, as the name suggests, the nodes that kickstarts the workflow, right? So it's an event that kickstarts the entire workflow. And then you have the action nodes, which is the node that performs the task, either send an email, store data, have certain, maybe even wait a certain period and stuff like that. So those are the action nodes. So 95% of the time you're working with action nodes, but the trigger node is usually the first one that's going to start the entire workflow. And this is basically the typical basic AI agent architecture that we're going to work with today. It comes, everything starts with a trigger node in n8n. So there's a trigger event that we define. And the trigger event can be on schedule. It could be, let's say, every day, 9 a.m. or every week on a certain day. Or it could be a chat trigger, right? You chat with n8n through Telegram or the native chat interface within n8n, or a form subscription, for example, right? So all that data goes into what we call the AI agent node. And in n8n, the AI agent node will then have an output into the next node. And this next node could be another loop back to how you sent the message to the AI agent. Let's say if you sent it with Telegram, it may loop it back to Telegram as a reply. Or if you don't want it to do that, if you want it to do a certain action, that could be the case as well, right? But an AI agent node in n8n is actually, you can think about it like an empty shell, right? If you don't connect it to three things, it's not going to be an AI agent. So these three things are the LLMs, right? Which is, you can view that as the brain of the AI agent. So AI agent needs a brain. And that could be OpenAI, that could be Claude, that could be Olama, could be Google Gemini, right? But all of these require API access token to connect it to the AI agent. And the second thing that you need to connect to an AI agent is the memory, right? So this creates the persistent memory that an AI agent needs to be able to understand, contextualize the conversations or the flow of events that's going into the AI agent. And third, you're going to connect it with the tools, right? That's really what's making the AI an AI agent, is being able to leverage a tool, right? So that tool can be anything from Gmail to Google Docs to, Tavily to Firecrawl, Scraper, all sorts of stuff. So again, like I said, in n8n, as long as the tool is exposed with API MCP, you can actually connect it to the AI agent, although a lot of tools these days already have their own community nodes created within n8n. And again, to connect this to all these tools, you need either an OAuth or some form of API access to connect them to the tools. Okay, so the basically the architecture that we talked about, this is the way that it's represented within n8n, right? Almost visually similar to what we just talked about, having a trigger node, which is right over here. Let me just turn on a laser pointer. Having a trigger node, having a trigger node going into the AI agent, and the AI agent having connected to a certain type of model, a memory, a tool, and then having that response set to another node. Now, quick one on the default run logic, right? So no matter how extensive your workflow is, the way you can think about it is that it's going to operate, or it's going to process node by node, right? So each node is going to be processed, it's going to run before the next node, fetches the input and then process it and then kicks out the output. And we'll take a look at what that input and output looks like in a little bit. But I just wanted to clarify that if you have a branch in the workflow like this, the logic to run this is always first it'll run the one at the top, and then it'll run the one at the second, always in that order, and they will always try to run both of them, one after the other. Okay, so with every node, when you open it up, and I know this is an AI agent node, but with every node, the concept is the same. We have an input and an output, right? So the input is basically the data that's going into the node, and that is represented in 3 different formats. And also the output is also represented in 3 different formats in terms of schema, table, and JSON, right? So the schema template looks something like this. So you have a variable key, and then you have a value, right? So it's a key value pair. And there's a reason why you want to keep this in mind, because later on I'll show why that's important when you're using it to drag and drop into the next node. And then there is a second version of that, which is a table format. And this is basically representing the same information, right? So the information that you're seeing here on the left, schema, is just represented in a table format here. So you can see the information or the data is exactly the same, which is chat input hello over here. And then the raw format is actually JSON, which is what's happening behind all of this. In fact, the JSON format is basically the basis format for any n8n workflows, right? So you can toggle on n8n, you can toggle between these 3, but essentially just to note that these are representing the same thing when going into the input and output panel. So in the input panel, as you can see here, you can later on, we'll do this live, but you can drag a certain variable into a prompt into the AI agent, for example. And the reason why this is powerful is because you can see here, there's a fix and expression toggle. If you toggle this to a fix, what happens is that, and you type in hello, what happens is that this is going to be hard-coded every time when the AI agent runs. So the AI agent is going to take hello as a prompt every time there's a run of the workflow. And that's why most of the time you don't want it to be a fixed value unless you intentionally want that to be. What you want to do is drag the chat input variable, drop it even into here. And what that does is basically makes it a dynamic value. So every time it runs, let's say the second thread of the conversation is no longer hello, is how are you, this will change into how are you automatically. All right, so I promise this is the last few slides on the conceptual side, and then we'll jump right into the hands-on session. But data types are super important in n8n. And in n8n, there are 5 different data types, right? So we've got the strings, we've got the numbers, we've got Boolean, arrays, and object. And what are these things, right? So string is basically a string of characters or alphabets, right? Like hello there. And then numbers are basically numbers, right? They could be whole numbers like these, or decimals, or negative. And Boolean is just either true or false. It's kind of just an expression. And arrays is basically a series of data values, right? This could be in strings or in numbers. And objects are basically nested data and nested values, which is a combination of all of that, right? So you don't need to know about that too deeply, but just try to understand that because there are different data formats, a lot of the times the errors that you encounter while building an n8n workflow is because if a certain node is expecting a string input and you're inserting an object, that's when typically the error happens. So it's important to note different data types as we go along building these workflows. Okay, last but not least, community nodes. These are nodes that are uploaded and maintained by the tool provider. So for example, this is, a Firecrawl node, which is not, which is, created and maintained by Firecrawl, which is a tool that crawls the, internet and scrape a certain page. Actually very useful. So just to note that with n8n Cloud, the community nodes is automatically uploaded, but if you're self-hosting, then there are a couple steps to do for you to set that up. Cool. All right. So those are the concepts, the important concepts that you need to know to build your first n8n workflow and agent, right? So there are two things that you need to have in order to build your first n8n workflow. And what you need is you need to sign up on n8n. And the second thing that you need to do is you need the Google AI Studio. And the reason for that is we're going to grab the LLM API keys from Google AI Studio, and it's one of the it's one of the rare ones that gives you free credits without signing in and putting in your credit card into the system. So I'm just going to give you guys maybe 2 minutes to sign up, and I think Tarek, I'm not sure if the link is being shared with the audience for n8n. If not, you guys can go to n8n.io and basically go to that page. All right. Okay. So I am going to walk through step by step on how to get signed up. I know most of you already probably signed up before, or maybe you're already in the process of signing up. But if you haven't, go to n8n.io or the link that's been shared and hit get started. And Tarek, I just want to make sure that I'm sharing the n8n page. Can somebody from the CXL side confirm that I'm sharing the, okay.
Yeah, I can see it, man. All good.
All good. Okay. So here it says, company email, but technically you don't need to. It can be your Gmail. It doesn't matter, right? Submit that, and then it's going to send you an email to your inbox. So what you want to do is just make sure that you grab that. You can either click the link or just copy it and go back to the page, paste that. Yeah. And let's do a random one there, and then here. Okay, so the full name, password, you guys can fill that in accordingly, but account name, again, you can just name it based on whatever you prefer. Click on verify that you're a human and start the free 14-day trial. Again, no credit card will be necessary. And just give it a couple of seconds and it'll ask you some onboarding questionnaire, right? Which, you can answer accordingly. Team you're on, let's say marketing, configuring API authentication. How do you hear about n8n, YouTube? Okay, so it's going to ask you to invite team members to your workspace, and you can skip that for now. And just give it maybe 30 seconds or so to spin up the workspace for you. All right, there we go. That's ready. So we're going to hit start automating. There we go. So it's automatically spinning up a work flow for me immediately. But if you are stuck at the overview page, what you can do is you can just hit the plus sign here, and you're going to go to workflow, and we're going to hit personal. And here you're going to spin up your first workflow, right? So we're going to add the first step here, right? And I'm just going to pause here for a moment, just make sure that everyone that's signing up has successfully signed up. And if you have, can you just type in yes in the chat and make sure that, we're all on the same page here? Great. All right. Cool. I see a lot of yeses. All right. So gonna go ahead. And here you're going to hit the plus sign in the middle. So this is where you're going to add your first trigger node, right? So again, there are a bunch of trigger nodes here that you can pick from. You can trigger manually, which means it's just only good for, test execution when you have to click on it. Again, you can hit on schedule, which is, scheduling every day, every hour. But what we want to do here, we're going to connect it with a chat trigger, right? So here, if you type in chat and click on chat, there's under the trigger, there's an on new chat event, right? So we're going to choose that. And this is going to pop up, right? So we can hit test trigger here. And this panel should pop up right below. This is a panel that is available if you are doing the n8n native chat. So here we're just going to type hello, right? The reason why we want to do that is we want to populate this node, right? So what does populate mean? It basically fills in the input of the node. And also in this case, because it's the first node, it only shows the output, which is the chat input hello. All right, okay. So now this is the first node, the very first node in your n8n workflow. So what you want to do next is to build the next node. So in the next node, what we want to do is hit the plus sign here, and we're going to choose the AI agent node here. Sorry, we're going to hit AI agent, and this should pop up on your monitor. And here, it knows already that you're connected to a chat trigger node. In this case, it is a chat trigger, so we're going to leave it as that. And under prompt, it also knows that to take the chat input, so you don't even need to drag and drop anymore, right? So just to show you guys, if let's say you want to define it yourself, you can hit that, and now you can actually hard code, hello, or you can toggle it to expression, and then you can drag the chat input and drop it over here, and you can see that below it says hello, which is reflective of what the value is here, right? So this is how then you can dynamically put in any value that's coming in, and you can pick and choose which input data that you want to put in here. All right, so I'm going to toggle this back to connected to chat trigger node because it's the same, which is the chat input here, right? And then you see these 3+ signs down below, the chat model, the memory, and tool. So those are the 3 things that we need to make this an AI agent, right? So we're going to hit chat model, and here we're going to pick Gemini, right? So literally type in Google Gemini, and we're going to click on that. And here, we're going to fill in the credential and the model, right? So under credential, as you can see, there's no credential set up yet because it's a fresh account. So I'm going to hit set up credential. Okay. So there are a couple of things that I need to fill in. We're going to leave the host URLs the same, right? So everything, we're going to leave it as that. But under API key, this is where we want to fetch our API key, right? So API key is just like a key for you to be able to access the LLM. So if you're not familiar with the term API, think of it as a way of communicating with your LLMs, right? So how does Google know that you're authorized to use the LLMs? Because every use of LLMs, you use tokens, right? So tokens are money, tokens are compute. So they need an API. So the API key is basically the key to reflect that you are actually an authorized user for that particular, to use that particular account. So where are we going to get this API key? This is where you want to go to Google Studio. So Google AI Studio. Sorry, so it's aistudio.google.com. Right here, we're going to hit get started. Okay, I'm already signed in here, but if you haven't, what you can do, and if you have a Google account, it should be a simple, it's a simple sign in with your Google account. And where you can go once you're logged in to Google AI Studio is to the left-hand panel here, and you can click Get API Key. All right. Again, I just want to pause here for a second. Just want to make sure that everybody's following. So again, I saw a great explanation about too fast. Okay, so I'm going to slow down. So just want to make sure that everyone is on the same page with aistudio.google.com. So if you are, please type in yes. If you're not, type in no. Okay. A lot of yeses, couple of no's. So just want to go. Okay, so a couple of requests to go back to the workflow and to repeat. So I will do that. 1 second. So in the workflow, the first thing you want to do, and I'm gonna just start on top here, right? Just to make sure that everybody's following. If you are, I'm assuming that the chat message, the chat note has been, you've managed to set that up. So the AI agent node, once you have this on, you want to choose connected chat trigger node. And then under prompt, you're going to leave everything as is, right? The moment you create the AI agent node, you're going to leave everything as is. And if you're wondering where you can get the AI agent node, you can hit the plus sign here. And under AI, pick AI agent, and that node's going to pop out, right? So this is a new one. I'm going to close this. And yeah, I'm going to delete that. All right. So how I created the or called the Gemini chat model is under chat model. There was a plus sign. If you click that, it's going to open up the Google Gemini chat model. And right now there's no credential set up. So you want to hit set up credential. This is where it's going to ask for an API key. All right. So that's the recap there. Okay. So under API keys, what you want to do is you want to hit create API key. Right. So you can name your API key, but I'm going to keep it as Gemini API key. Typically, you can maybe name it, maybe name it n8n demo, right? And you're going to need to select a project. If you don't have a project, you can create a project and hit create project. And some of the interfaces I've noticed that are different. Sometimes you already have a default. If that was your first time creating it, you may have a default API key over there. So if you already have a default API key, you can actually copy it and use it, right? But otherwise, you can create it the way I did and just hit copy API key over here with this button, and then go back to your workflow and paste the API key. And what you want to do now is hit save. Sorry, I'm going to toggle this to expression so everyone can see the API key. I'm going to revoke it afterwards, of course. So you want to keep this safe, right? So API keys, always keep it safe, because once someone has your API key, it basically can access your LLMs, all that stuff, right? So you want to keep that safe, and then you want to hit save. Okay, so connection tested successfully means connection is live and we're good to go there. Cool. Okay, so now what we want to do, the second thing, let me just check why this is showing that. Okay, so once you've set up the API account, what you want to do is you can choose the model that you want to use, right? So under Gemini, there's a couple of models, but in this case, I'm just going to keep it as Gemini 2.5 Flash. That's good enough for the stuff that we want to do. So we're going to leave it as that. We're not going to change anything. So we're going to toggle out, right? Now, the second thing you want to do is to connect the persistent memory, right? Because an AI agent with a brain, but with no memory, is not going to be able to remember what you just told it, right? So let me just give it, for example, if you type in hello now, right? So you can see the input is hello. The output is how can I help you today, which means it's live, all right? I can tell it my name is Marconi, and it's going to say, hello, Marconi, it's good to meet you. How can I help you today? I'm going to ask it again, what is my name? Right. So it says, I don't know your name. As an AI, I don't have access to personal information about you unless you choose to tell me. Right. So it just completely forgot what I just told it. So that's why the memory is a very core, important part of building an effective AI agent. So sorry, let me just redo that because I was too quick. So what you want to do is to hit the plus sign, and there are a couple of memories that you can choose from, right? Typically, Postgres is a good one. But here, because we want to keep it simple, this is the first workflow you're building. So we're going to hit simple memory because this is the native simple memory that n8n Cloud has, and it's simple for you to use, and it's quite reliable as well. So it's actually pretty good, and for you to be able to even build something that is pretty complex. So we're going to choose simple memory. And context window length is basically how many past interactions that you had with the particular AI agent, right? So in this case, we're going to leave it as 5. We're not going to change anything here. And then we're going to toggle out. Okay, so now you've got the LLM and the simple memory connected. The last thing we want to connect is the tool. So we're going to hit the plus sign here under tool, and we're going to search for Gmail, all right? And here there are 2 Gmails. We want to make sure we are choosing the right one. So human in the loop is if we want to ask approval through Gmail, but what we want to choose now is not human in the loop, is the Gmail tool. So this is the second one. If you type in Gmail, so just make sure you choose the second one here. And once you choose that, this is going to pop up. And with Gmail now, it's super easy. If you are on a Google Chrome, you can hit sign in with Google. Okay. And then it's going to ask you for, a credential pop-up. It's going to show. And then you're going to select all the permissions that it's asking for. And you're going to hit continue. So that's pretty much it, right? So it says here credential created successfully. Your account has been connected successfully. So now we're not going to do anything because we know that we are connecting this Gmail because we want the agent to be able to use a Gmail to send emails out. So the operation send is correct. We want everything else is set up correctly. We're going to leave it as that. Now, 2 is basically who we're going to send this email to. This, we're going to let the AI be able to decide this by just clicking on this blue button here, this blue sparkly button. Once you click that, it will say define automatically by model. So the model is going to decide who to send it to. Now, that may sound scary, but it's going to follow your strict instruction. If you tell it, send it to automatewithmark@gmail.com, it's only going to send it to automatewithmark@gmail.com. It's not going to send it to anybody else, right? Same with subject, we're going to let it be able to decide what the subject line is. And then message, we're also going to let it decide what the message is. All right, so we're going to, click on the blue button for these 3 here. Email type, we're going to leave it as that. And that's it. We're going to toggle out, right? Okay, so now that we have all these tools connected, I'm going to take a pause here again. Just want to make sure that everyone is following. I see somebody saying that they don't see the pop-up. So it might be because I'm screen share thing, but it's basically just a simple Google credential authentication pop-up. So yeah, so if you guys are on the same page, please type in yes, and then I'll move forward. Cool, awesome. All right, seems like everyone is on the same page, or mostly everyone. So here, once we have all these 3 connected, now we can actually ask it to do something, right? So we can ask it, hey, can you come up with a 300-word blog post or blog for, let's say, CXL, a premium B2B marketing and education company, and send it to my email at automatewithmark@gmail.com. All right, I'm going to add a plus sign here just so that there's a differentiation. But all right, so we can tell it that. So essentially, I'm just telling it, but I cannot. Okay, it's telling me I cannot write the block 300 pros for you. Okay, so maybe I need to connect some tools, right, to be able to come up with a good block. Sometimes it will go ahead and write it for you. In this case, it's refusing to. Maybe the model that I chose is not up for it. But what I can tell it, for example, can you send an email about my appointment with Mark at 2:30 p.m. to automate with Mark. So at gmail.com. All right. So here you can see that the green sign is actually going and using the LLM twice. So it's referring to that. It's actually referring to the memory, as well as it's also utilizing the Gmail tool here to send the email. All right. So here, let's go to our email and see if we actually receive anything. So here, I actually received, hi Mark, this is a reminder about our appointment today at 2:30 p.m. Right. So so right now we have successfully created an AI agent that's capable of sending email on your behalf to anybody, as long as you tell it to send it to them, right? Of course, when you look at this is a very simple workflow, and you say, hey, some of my Claude agent or ChatGPT agent might be able to do that as it is. So why are we doing that? Well, the reason is we're going to build the reason is today we're building the basic foundation of a workflow of an AI agent. And later on, I'll show you, 2 or 3 other use cases where it gets a little bit more advanced, a little bit more complex, where it kind of makes sense how all these things can be automated when pulled together. But it's just to give you an introduction, give you a feeler as to how these AI agents actually leverage tools, right? Like for example, earlier I said, create a 300-word blog post, and it's not confident in being able to use that or to do that. So you can connect tool, like for example, Google Doc is another tool that you can connect, right? And the same thing with Google Doc, you can sign in with Google and be able to connect it, and then it'll be able to draft those blog posts into the Google Docs and be able to share that Google link to via email, via Telegram and stuff like that, right? So before I move on to demoing the other workflow, I just want to point out the difference between adding a tool here and adding a Gmail tool or Gmail note over here, right? So you may be wondering, hey, what's the difference between adding it as a tool to the agent versus adding it over here? So for example, I can add this note, right? I can add a send message note over here, and then it will still run that, right? So the difference is that if I attach it as a tool, the AI agent has a choice on whether or not to use the tool. So it's going to infer from my request whether or not I'm asking it to send an email, right? So if I say send an email, then it will infer that, okay, I actually need to use the tool to fulfill that request. But if not, if I wire it out this way, what happens is that whether it doesn't have a choice, right? The workflow doesn't have a choice whether or not to send the email. It will always run the AI agent note and then subsequently run the send message. So if you want it to always send a message via email, this is what you're going to do. You're going to connect it to the Gmail note this way. But if you want it to be multi-agentic, multi-tools, so not always all the requests are going to be involving sending an email, you would connect it this way as a tool so that it has a choice to use it or not. Okay. All right. So that is the, I hope everyone was able to get that up and running. Yeah, if you were able to get it up and running on your end, please type in yes. Just want to make sure that, somebody received a 300 word blog post. So that's great. Also a lot of yeses there. All right, great. Yep. So that was an easy one, to get started, so that, you guys have a feel on how it all works. Of course, there are more advanced build that we can go ahead and build, but this being a 45-minute session, I can't squeeze all of that into one session. But don't worry, the next few sessions, it's going to get progressively more advanced, and it's going to get you there by the end of it, right? But here, I just want to demo some of the few possibilities that we can do and we can come up with, right? Like, for example, this particular workflow, and I'm going to explain each and every node to let you know what's happening here, right? This is a inbound sales. So this is a sales use, and later on I'll show you another marketing usage as well. So this is a sales usage where it will respond, or the trigger event is actually an on-form submission, right? So this on-form submission, it's actually a form that you can embed to your website or to your landing page. So I'm going to hit execute workflow here just to show you guys what it looks like, right? So this is an inbound form. Again, this can be embedded into your web page, into your landing page. So for example, I'm just going to fill in, let's say, John Doe email address. Again, I want to put my own email address here. The reason for that is I don't want it to randomly send it to other people, right? And then phone number, I'm going to leave it blank. So this is similar to, let's say, any inbound lead form that you have, as a business. You want to know, what their businesses are and stuff like that. In this case, I am acting as Code Cloud, right? So this is, let's say, how Code Cloud inbound form is. We sell to engineering teams, DevOps, IT departments who wants to upskill. So let's say, how can Code Cloud help? Let's say upskilling in AI skills. And let's say the person submits this form on your webpage, right? So once they submit the form, it goes into an AI agent similar to what we've just built. So in this case, you see I didn't attach any memory, I didn't attach any tool. Why? Because this agent, I just wanted to come up with a prompt, right? So I've given it some system prompts as a video prompt agent. And the reason why I wanted to create a prompt is because that prompt is going to get passed on to HeyGen, right? So what HeyGen is, and I'm going to toggle it to here. If you guys are not familiar with HeyGen, it is one of the tools that generate lifelike videos, AI generated videos based on your similarities, based on your videos, right? So it can actually clone you or impersonate you. So in this case, I have a few avatars that I've created of myself. So in basically, once you've done that, you do need to be on a paid plan. But once you've done that, you can grab the API keys in similar fashion that we did, slightly more complex, which we won't get into the weeds of today. But once you've done that, you basically call the HTTP request to post a request to make the video, right? So HeyGen is actually processing the video, and then we're going to wait, a certain period of time because it needs time to process. So, it's processing the video based on the prompt that this agent comes up with. and then it goes to get the video, right? Why do I want to get the video? Is because, hey, the video has been generated, right? So we want to get the video. And this loop is just to make sure that if the video is not ready, it's going to go into a loop and it's going to try to get the video again and again until the video is ready. And then the if gate is if the video is ready, it goes into another OpenAI model. And the reason why we want to feed it to that is because this is a caption model, right? So if we look at the content here, so it's coming up with the caption or the content based on what we've filled up on the form earlier here, right? So it's taking inference from the form submission. So what the prompt agent and the content caption agent is doing is sorry, not the caption agent, the email writing agent is doing is taking reference this guy called John Doe, based from CXL, and coming up with the email copies and video contents and scripts in order to send them an email with a short video inside, which is an intro video to get them to join or come into a demo call with your salesperson, right? So in this case, it's already sent an email to automate with Mark at Gmail. So we're gonna toggle over to automate with Mark and let's look at and see what the email looks like, right? All right, cool. So I should be seeing the email now. So this is what the email looks like, right? So I received it 2 minutes ago, right? So based on what I filled in, right? I filled in John Doe. Go, hey John, I took a quick look at CXL because I put in that my business URL is CXL, and thought you might appreciate a brief intro on how CodeCloud helps teams ramp up DevOps skills with hands-on training. It's exactly how we would talk to engineering team, right? So hands-on labs, real cloud sandboxes with Kubernetes, Docker, Terraform, AWS, etc. So these are all the technical terms that the engineering team would like to hear and want to upskill in. And then it created a quick 10-second intro video here with the thumbnail so that people can click on it and it actually downloads the video. Okay, so that is a video that's generated based on, I don't know if the audio is coming through, Tarek.
I know you have to share screen with audio. It happens a lot with Zoom. It's annoying.
Did the audio come through or no?
No, it didn't come through. Like usually when you share your
Ah,
screen, you have to share and you have to enable a share sound as well. Uh,
okay. I don't know if
but I
uh,
believe, yeah, but I trust you. It has a, I know, like I faced the problem,
uh,
this problem so many
yeah,
times.
yeah. So anyway, assume that there was an audio. You
Yeah.
guys can see the movement and the video, right? So I did not say anything or move like that or said any of those things in terms of the script, right? So this is all AI generated of myself. All I did was took a 1.5 minute video on HeyGen and that generated my avatar. So now I have a workflow. Okay. So basically with this workflow, every single lead that comes through the inbound form is going to immediately get an email that is personalized to them with a video that is talking to directly to them, to their pain points, knowing what the business pain points are. And you can add even layers to this, right? So right now it's very generic. I built this in maybe 15, 20 minutes, right? It's currently very generic. What you can do, you can add an Apollo layer, data enrichment layer to find out who their managers are, who their co-workers are and stuff like that, decision makers, etc., and have a multi-thread channel. So there are lots of potential that you can build in terms of workflow here, in terms of sale, right? Cool. All right. I am mindful of the time. So I'm just going to show my last workflow here with the marketing one. This is a bit more complex, but basically what this workflow is trying to achieve, it is trying to create reels for Instagram, right? So you have a folder, an n8n folder with currently, some random pictures of a gym, some coffee, and some croissant. So I'm assuming, this is a coffee shop or a gym that is trying to create social media posts, social media reel. So it goes through this node, which is a randomizer. So it randomly picks an image and then uploads it to a database, gets the real idea and the prompt, and then it posts it to WaveSpeed. Again, WaveSpeed generates videos from the particular image. Same thing here with what you saw earlier. Wait for the image, for the video to be generated, and then try to get the video. There's a loop there, and then goes to this thing called a submagic. So submagic is, it's an auto caption tool. Again, there are many tools that I'm covering here, but not all of them have alternatives too, right? This is by no means like they're the best tools out there. So same thing with calling any tools that needs time to generate. You need to wait, and it goes into a loop before sending a message for approval. And once you do that, I'm going to run the workflow as I'm talking here. It's going to upload the reels into what we call Blotato. Blotato is a tool that automates your social media posts, and then that creates an Instagram post at the end of it, right? So I'm gonna fast forward on this. If we go to our Instagram now, I don't know if it's posted yet. Typically, you need to wait, you know, like 30 seconds or so, and it will show up. Basically, again, just to recap, is taking randomly one of these images and trying to create a social media reel to be posted to my Instagram, right? Again, because I don't run cafes and gyms, I would probably delete it immediately. But let's see. Okay, so yeah, so we've got so you pick the Quazon. So let's open that up, and okay, it's a short one. I don't know if you guys can hear the audio, but there was an audio. And the caption is important because some people on Instagram they're not turning on their audio, right? So yeah, so it comes with the captions as well. Holiday vibes with a taste of festive magic, etc. So yeah, okay, I'm gonna delete this again because it's not
If
typically what I would post on my Instagram.
if you do the same demo on all of your presentation, like your followers will be like, "Why are you obsessed with croissants?" So I hope you're deleting it.
Yeah. So it's I should probably create a different Instagram account to run my
Or
demos, but
like maybe a
mm,
burger, like differentiate that a croissant every time.
that's true. That's true. Yeah, so yeah, that's a quick rundown on how it could possibly be used for, your Instagram Reels marketing, etc. And that's all to say, because you are the one building this, you know what's happening on each node, it's very deterministic, right? So there are guardrails around, it's not going to go completely off rails, completely wrong. So that is to me the power of n8n, right? All right. So yeah, conclusion. What's next, right? So today you learned the very basic of n8n, how to sign up, how to set things up, how to run your first workflow. But to me, I think that's where the magic is, right? Running your first AI agent, seeing how it all works, seeing how it all connects together, seeing how it fetches, goes into your Gmail, helps you send message. I think that's the first spark that's gonna help you, continuously learn on n8n. And by no means it's super easy to learn n8n. I'm not gonna sit here and sugarcoat everything, right? But with the knowledge, you actually learn also how the fundamentals of this is actually very much applicable to other types of tools, right? So the next thing you can do is n8n has an AI builder feature, right? So if you were to go to your workflow, and I'm not going to toggle it back, but if you were to go to your workflow and on the right-hand corner, you'll see a little sparkly thing. And if you click on that, that is actually the AI help. You can chat with it, you can ask it, but there's also a builder version where you can ask it to build you a workflow for certain use cases and stuff like that, right? However, if you use that, you'd still need to understand how it all comes together. You still need to understand, where to put the API keys, how to connect it to certain tools, because they're not going to be able to do that for you, right? It can build you a template, it can build you a structure based on what you need, but you still need to understand, right? And the second thing is there's a huge ecosystem of n8n templates and creators in the marketplace. So you can go to n8n templates. Some of it is paid, some of it is free. And I also happen to be one of the creators there. So you can go check out, some of the workflows that I've built. They're all free. And some of them actually come with, a step-by-step guide on how to put them together. So yeah, go and check them out if you want. And then, some of the questions that you guys might have is in today's age with OpenClaw, with Claude Code, with Claude Cowork, do we really need n8n anymore, right? The answer is yes, right? The reason for that is there are some workflows that you probably want some pretty strict guardrails around, right? So that's where you want to use n8n. So for example, some of the workflows that I use or that showcase in terms of social media posting and stuff like that, I can connect that with OpenClaw. I can connect that to Claude Cowork or Claude Code to be able to call that particular workflow. And that way, I know for a fact that Claude can go ahead to my Instagram channel and post something that I didn't approve because the only thing it can call is the n8n workflow, which requires my approval, right? Because I built it that way. So that's where n8n could come hand in hand with all these new tools, all these new agents, and it's just an extremely versatile tool, especially when connecting it to third-party apps that may or may not have built it off the shelf. And yeah, that's the new future of automation. Connecting it to some of the agentic tools that people are rolling out. I know, we are all overwhelmed. Every week there seems to be a new tool that's coming out. But yeah, n8n I think is here to stay, just because of how clear it is, how visible it is in terms of the step-by-step process that it's going through. All right, so that's the end of my time. And thank you all for sitting through that. I hope that was valuable, but yeah, just opening up the floor for any questions, please go ahead.
Awesome, man. That was like really nice. And I saw in the chat how everyone was following along. I think most of them were able to follow along and, build their first agent. In case you weren't able to catch up, we're gonna share the recording with everyone. If you are signed up to the CXL platform, it will be available there within 24 hours. And then we're gonna share the recording via email. If you register to this webinar, you receive an email, I think, early next week with all of the recordings from all the sessions in the upcoming few days. We are obviously out of time, but we're gonna add just a few minutes, so maybe you can answer a question or two. For the rest, you can connect with Marconi on LinkedIn, and in case we cannot answer your questions now, he's more than happy. I'm speaking on your
Yeah,
behalf. Are you happy?
no, feel free.
Feel
Feel
free
free,
to send
please.
him a LinkedIn message with your question if we're not able to do so. Just few things from my end before we answer two questions. Sorry about that, guys, but few things. Speaking of automations, if speaking of AI, at CXL, we have lots of upcoming live sessions if this is something you want to upskill in. So from June until September, we have 12 sessions around AI. So n8n, Claude Code, even vibe coding tools like Replit and Lovable. So each week, each Tuesday, we have a session talking about different marketing use cases. So you can see in June, we talk about how you use n8n and Claude Code together, as Marconi mentioned, like one does not replace the other. You can use them hand in hand. For content creation, for SEO automation. In July, it's more about paid advertising. In August, it's all about vibe coding, satellite apps to get more leads. And in September, we have a course for agencies on how you can adapt to this AI age. So you can get all of them for $499, or if not all of them are relevant, you want one of them, that will be $150 per course. But obviously, being biased, I think if the full program would benefit you the most. But if you want to get either one of them, just make sure to do it fast, because after May 31st, the prices will increase. So we're gonna put the link of this landing page in the chat. So feel free after this webinar to check it out. Look at the programs, see if it's a good fit for you, and hopefully we can see you there. But yeah, now back to our normal scheduling. I'm just gonna go through. Oof, we have 18, 16 questions in the Q&A. I doubt we're gonna be able to answer half of them even. So I'm gonna pick a question or two, and for the rest, like I said, feel free to reach out to Marconi. I think the most frequent one here is like, what's the difference between n8n and Make and other automation tools like Zapier?
That's a great question, actually. And not too long ago, I made a video about that. So with Make and Zapier, well, if simply put, I think with Zapier, a lot of things, and with Make to a certain extent, right? A lot of connections with third-party apps needs to be off the shelf. So if they have built a connection within Zapier, that's when you could choose that particular tool to be connected to. Meanwhile, n8n gives you absolute flexibility. Like I said, anything with API MCP exposed, you technically can connect that to n8n. For example, in one of the workflows in both of the examples that I've shown, it was actually through a HTTP request node, right? So that's a generic node to connect it to anything that's API or MCP exposed. Meanwhile, with Zapier and Make, I want to say that it's easier to learn in a way. The learning curve is a lot less. So if you're not thinking of something too complex, Zapier and Make is a good option to go with. However, you do trade that simplicity with some of the control, like I said, with some of the more sophisticated workflows that you might have in mind. For example, like having human in the loop and stuff like that, which to be fair, Zapier and Make can do, but it's not as advanced as how n8n built it for, because you can have human in the loop, on Slack, on Telegram, on any other platforms that you want, and also be able to have another agent maybe check your previous agent's work and be able to call, sub workflows, for example, right? Don't want to get too ahead of myself here, but maybe you hear this term, in the next few webinars where you can have a workflow calling another workflow. So having almost like a multi-agent orchestration layer, right? So those are the type of things that may be a little bit difficult to build in Zapier and Make. But yeah, so to me, that's the biggest difference between n8n and Zapier and Make.
So I think there's also lots of questions around the pricing regarding n8n. There's no free plan, as far as I know. They give you a free trial and then you're hooked and yeah, they take your money. At least like for me, I'm using the basic one, which is $20 per
Yeah.
month. I think with this one, at least we're running lots of workflows. It depends if you're doing lots of workflows, maybe you want a more advanced plan, but I think as a start, the basic one is more than enough. I don't know, Marconi, if you have other suggestions.
Ab no, absolutely. I think the basic plan will get you a long way. It is $20 a month, but it comes with, again, the cloud infrastructure. Again, like I said, it's totally open source, right? So technically, you can go to GitHub and if you want to go through the technical setup, you can set it up on even your own system, even on your own laptop, right? But again, as soon as you close your laptop, you turn off your laptop, it's not going to work because it's depending on your system to run, right? So you probably want to run it in a VPS, for example, like Hostinger, right? So you
Yeah.
probably see Hostinger trying to, peach their n8n instances and stuff like that is also a possibility. But again, you need to maintain it. You need to spend time looking into the infrastructure. So really depending on your comfort level and what you're looking for there.
Yeah, and also there are some questions regarding the API costs. Also, it depends on, I would say, which LLM you're using, which model. So, like, if it's, for example, GPT-5 Mini, like it costs maybe a few cents to run it. If you use maybe a different model, it's more expensive. So definitely keep an eye on the API costs when you're running these workflows. Once you create the API key, whether it's AI Google Studio or the platform.openai, you can always see how much you're spending on a daily basis. But if you're using the basic modules, should be fine, like few cents there and there.
Yeah, yeah. I would say, just from experience that kind of, again, it depends on what you're running, right? Like if you're generating video for every inbound lead that's coming in, it also depends on the traffic. I mean, inbound leads you're
Yeah.
getting, right? So it can go up pretty quickly also. But there are ways to kind of fine tune that. There are ways to kind of be selective with the model that you're using, which is what n8n is great for, as you've seen. You can actually choose the model, the exact model that you want to choose for certain operations, right? So if you think that, for example, the operations of coming up with the email copies don't really need such a complex model, well, just put GPT-3 or whatever in it, right? And it's going to cost you like 0.001 cent for every run, right? So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And even for me now, like we're gonna see throughout this week, but in some tasks we use Gemini, and other tasks we use GPT. Like that's the cool thing about n8n is having that flexibility to like select which model to use for which task. There's lots of more questions that unfortunately we cannot answer, but feel free to connect with Marconi after this session. Guys, we still have n8n webinars tomorrow, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. For tomorrow specifically, it's going to be more focused on creating workflows for content creation. So it's gonna be a fun one. We're gonna share lots of demos, live demos, so you can see how you can use them yourself. So it's the same time as today. It's gonna be around 11 a.m. CT time or 6 p.m. CET time. Either way, you'll receive an email 1 hour before with the joining link. Marconi, man, it was awesome having you. It was, I think, everyone in the chat enjoyed it. Super nice introduction session for n8n. I think people now have a good foundation of what they can do with it, and hopefully for the remaining of the week, they can see how they can build on that skills that they've learned today.
Yeah. Thank you, Tarek, for having me. And again, thank you everyone for sitting through that. And I hope it was valuable. And yeah, please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Yeah, I'm happy to chat with everyone. And have a good one, guys.
Awesome. See you tomorrow, guys. Have a good one. Thanks, man. Enjoy your I think it's
Right.
2 1 a.m. your time or something.
It is, yeah, it is. I'm gonna
Okay.
hit the sack
Good
pretty
night.
soon.
Good night, man.
All right, good night.